Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So it's been a hot minute since I've posted, but I have been ultra busy and I just went to VidCon, which was an absolutely amazing experience. Not so much for like the networking, but more for the presentations. So I feel energized and ready to get going again. And that's what the hand gestures are for. This is my energy. This is the reflection of all this energy that I have now. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different because I had some pretty amazing conversations with friends in LA and we were talking about spoopy stuff, and I just think that kind of stuff is so fascinating, like paranormal kind of stuff. I don't necessarily believe in it, but I love talking about my personal weird experiences, and I love hearing about other people's personal weird experiences. Even though I don't necessarily believe in paranormal stuff, I like the idea of it. I kind of wish it existed, so I enjoy talking about it. And that's what we're gonna do today. All right, let's get started. Before we go any further, I'd like to ask you guys to hit the subscribe button and definitely hit the bell button that's right next to it, because that will let you know anytime I produce new content for you to enjoy, hopefully, and watch, maybe. Also, if you like this video at any point in time, I suggest you hit the like button. That helps me out a whole bunch. It helps me figure out what exactly I'm going to put on this channel, and that's always a nice thing. Yeah. So some of you may be thinking, okay, if you don't believe in it, why would you talk about it? Because that seems a little ridiculous. Well, for a couple of reasons. One, I like to kind of debunk some people's really bad experiences with paranormal things, and you know, I feel like that's super helpful. It's helpful to realize that sometimes your brain plays tricks on you, and you know, your house might not necessarily be haunted, but you may be creating a haunting in your mind. And also that I just find it really entertaining. I love ghost stories. I love horror films. I really enjoy being like freaked out and scared. Which seems a little weird. My husband absolutely hates horror movies. My mother absolutely hates horror movies. I have like friends that I have to go see horror movies with. So I really like talking about, you know, freaky things that kind of give you like a weird vibe. And I definitely have a good amount of like weird experiences that I would classify as paranormal, in that, you know, they can be interpreted as paranormal. But at the end of the day, I have absolutely no idea really what happened. So I figured I'd talk about a couple of things that I've been through with you today. And then at the end, I'll kind of talk about some of the things that debunk a lot of experiences and why it's important to keep those things in mind while you're kind of living your life and maybe experiencing some things that are maybe creeping you out or making you feel unsafe in your home. So my first experience, and this is not my first experience, by the way, I've had like a lifetime of really weird shit happen, but this is the first one that I can remember in my childhood home. My mother and I moved into my childhood home when I would assume like 4, maybe 5. I actually don't remember. It was like when I was really young. At the oldest, I would have been 6. At the youngest, I probably would have been around 4, or maybe like 3.5. But I have like very strong memories from the time I was 2.5 and on, or like some really early before that. My brain is weird. I remember a lot of stuff. So we had just moved into our house, and it was this kind of 40s little, I guess you would consider it kind of like a little bungalow, maybe? I don't know. It was like a very, very small 2-bedroom, 1-bath house that had a really big front and backyard. We moved in, and the only previous owner to that point, I believe, was an elderly lady, and she had passed away in the home. So right off the bat, I don't care if people have died in homes. I don't think it makes a difference. I've for sure had someone die in this home, I believe. I think this home has only ever had one owner. It was a man and a woman. They raised kids here and everything. And I believe the man died in this house. I can't quite remember, but it doesn't really make a difference to me. I feel like anywhere you live, anywhere you go, someone's died there. So it bother me in the slightest, but that's just like setting the stage. So we totally didn't think anything was creepy about the house, and we moved into the house. My mom took the bedroom, if you're in the hall, to the right, and I took the bedroom to the left. And the bedroom to the left always had like a weird feeling in it. I say that to kind of explain that something was for sure happening in that room. Not to say that, you know, it was definitely like a ghost or something, because who the knows, but that something was in that room, whether it's like a magnetic field or like, you know, maybe it was like right under an electrical pole. I have no idea. So one of my earliest memories in this house was of me in my bedroom, and I was trying to play this little like Casio keyboard. And back then, keyboards weren't fancy. You had two things that you could do with it, on and off. And it was like this little mini keyboard, so like a half a keyboard. I was kind of playing with it, and I was trying to like do something in particular with it. I must have been maybe 5 or 6, maybe a little bit older. I don't entirely remember how old I was when this happened. So I was playing it, and I was getting really pissed off because, you know, I'm a perfectionist. And I got really mad and pushed it away from me. So I sat there for a second, and all of a sudden the keys started moving on their own and playing something. And like I said, this was not a fancy keyboard. It did not have a player piano function as far as I know. It was an on and off switch and a volume knob, and that was it. So I don't believe that that thing could have done that. To be fair, I was really young, so maybe I hallucinated something. And here's the thing, like, people don't realize that people hallucinate a lot more than you would suspect. Like, people without mental issues that cause hallucinations hallucinate a lot more than you would think is possible. So I don't know what happened, but I just know that that freaked me the out. And like I said, I had a lot of experiences in this room in particular, and we came to find out that this is the room of the lady who obviously had lived there her entire adult life at least. And she had, I guess, her like sewing room in here, or in there. So it was a special room to her. So it kind of made sense that a lot of the stuff that was experienced in that room primarily. We did get creeped out enough about the house that my mom built on an addition to the back. So she built on to the existing porch like another room that had like a laundry in it, and then she built a big closed-in porch right next to it. And when she did that, she moved down there so that I could take the other room, and neither of us went into that room. So that tells you how creepy it was. Now, like I said, it could have been any number of things. It could have been a magnetic field there that was kind of like messing with our brains, like scrambling our signals. It could have been, you know, electricity overhead, because there are electric poles around that house, and you can still, like, if you look on Google Maps at that house, you can see like there are electrical lines like right next to it. So it could have been any number of things. I just think it's interesting that it was centered on that room in particular. So there's a hallway here, bathroom and 2 bedrooms right here. So all of that is like one wing of the house. And it's kind of weird that it was pretty much only in that part of the house that most of the stuff happened. So I think that's fascinating. I would really love for someone to go in there and figure out if there are like magnetic issues, or also really love to talk to the current owners to see if they've experienced anything. Because that was like a good solid, maybe like 12 or 13 years that we experienced stuff in that room. And like I said, it was bad enough for both my mother and I that we did not go into that room at all. Like, that room ended up being a storage room. Neither of us would go into it. So I think it's kind of fascinating. So it wasn't just one person, it was 2 people. Well, more people than that, but you know, the people who lived there, 2 people. So like I said, that's just one of the experiences that I had in this house, but I thought that was the most interesting because it was the, I want to say it was like the most visual experience that I had of something happening. Because things would like move around when I was trying to go to sleep in my room, but in general, like, I feel like that because the lights were on, I was 100% awake, I was sitting up. That's the thing that I have the least excuses for. Like, I can't say, oh, you were having, you know, sleep terrors or night terrors or whatever. I was 100% awake and cognizant, the lights were on. You know, there was really no excuse for me to have that hallucination if that's what it was. All right, so the second one. As I remember, my mom was out of town with her then boyfriend, and they had gone like out into the country somewhere to visit his dad, and I was staying with one of my aunts. I was sleeping in my aunt's bed, and my aunt was comfortable sleeping on the couch, so she would sleep on the couch since she went to bed later. And my little cousin was in the back bedroom. So it was a duplex. You'd walk in, and it was like a kind of a galley. So living room, kitchen, bathroom, 2 bedrooms, one kind of slightly in front of the other, and the other is bigger. I was sleeping in my Aunt Mel's bed, and pretty much everyone in my family needs complete darkness to sleep. Like, we're all very sensitive sleepers, and I in particular have a really hard time falling asleep in places that are not my personal home. Like this whole last week in LA, I got the worst sleep, and I feel like partially still dead, even though I've had a couple of nights to recover. That's how bad I sleep in strange places. Like, I wake up all the time, and I have a really hard time falling asleep. So I was in my Aunt Mel's bed. I had the fan on. I had all of, she had blackout curtains, so there was absolutely no light coming from anywhere except for a little bit of the TV light from under the door. So I was laying there, and I always sleep with the covers over my head. And I thought I heard my little cousin yell or scream something. So I pulled the covers off of my head and just listened for a second. And I was like, all right, I must have imagined that. Put the covers back over my head. And it took me a minute to process that I had seen a really bright something or another where the window would be if it wasn't blacked out. So I was like, that's weird. I know that it was pitch black in here before. What is that? So I pulled down the covers, and there it was still, and it was kind of, I would say it's the shape of a person, except it was just a amorphous, weird light thing in front of me. So it looked like it was the shape of a person. It could have been anything at that point. I didn't know. I just felt like it was a person. So I put the covers back over my head, and then I peeked out with just one eye, and the thing was moving towards me. And I got this horrible cold chill and started shivering. And I was just sitting there and trying to slowly back away. And finally, and this is the first time I ever cursed in front of anyone, I said, get the fuck in here. My aunt came in, and she was like, what is going on? And I jumped up and started shaking, and I was like, there's something in the room, there's something in the room. And that's the first time I was ever truly traumatized by something that I saw. Now this one I can almost explain, maybe I was dreaming. I have no idea. I don't feel like I was asleep because I had just laid down, and like I said, I have a very difficult time falling asleep. That being said, I do have a history of night terrors, so it could have very well been that I fell asleep very quickly and something happened. I think it's weird that I was able to still move, because I did still move. But yeah, that one is weird on so many levels, because it kind of came out of nowhere. There was a sound attached to it that my aunt said that she didn't hear at all. And that I felt like I was fully awake and cognizant and able to move. So that one was a really, really weird thing. And especially since I, usually with sleep terrors, you feel like your mouth is full of honey. Does that make sense? You can't actually properly speak. And this one, I had absolutely no issue speaking. I yelled at her. As soon as I realized that this thing was not going away, I yelled for my aunt. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing. Again, could be weird electric impulses. I've read that hormones can impact your ability to process information and kind of create hallucinations for you. So maybe I was just going through some sort of hormonal shift. I have no idea. But that was, I did not go to sleep that night, by the way, because then I had to go back home. My mom was picking me up late that night. I was trying to get some sleep before she came to pick me up. So she picked me up, and that's when we got our cat Cricket. But other than that, she picked me up and I had to go like back into this room that already had shit going on. So I did not sleep very well that night at all. I think I actually got up and went to watch TV at some point in the night so I wouldn't have to be in my bedroom. So that's the second thing. And I'm going to give you one more interesting piece of information that is less like ghostly and more like knowing things that you couldn't have possibly known. So to give you a little like tiny bit of history, my father died when I was very, very young, and I didn't really have a chance to get to know him at all. And by really, I mean I didn't have a chance to get to know him at all. I was still an infant when he died, and he did commit suicide. And yeah, so I didn't really know much about him. He didn't like having his picture taken, and it was the 80s, so you could get away with not having your picture taken. My mom would tell me like vague things about him, but I didn't really know a whole lot about him. I knew that like, I knew some stories like that he really liked reading encyclopedias, and that he was a really sweet person, and you know, that he really loved my Meemaw. Yes, I have a Meemaw, I'm Southern. But other than that, I really didn't know a whole lot of him. Actually, I was like 14 when I saw him in a video, and it literally was a video where like someone just panned across the room and you got like a glimpse of my dad. So I have very little in the way of photos of him. Like I said, he hated being photographed, and I only have a memory of that one little video clip of him, and I played that like back a million times when my Meemaw found it. That being said, I must have been around, I want to say I was like 12 or 13 when I had this dream, and it was of a man in a kind of apartment. Like I felt like it was an apartment, but you couldn't really tell. It could have been a house for all I knew. But it had a kitchen over here, a living room over here, and then the hall was over here. So kitchen, living room, hall, and it was like an open floor plan, but it was shades of like beige and orange, and the couch was like a dusty orange color. I remember this all incredibly vividly. Like I could go into that apartment now if it was decorated the same and be like, yes, this is the place. That was the setting, and I remember this man just walking back and forth saying I could have done something different, I should have done something different, and thinking like that everything was his fault. And then he walked to the front of the couch and he laid down and he put a blanket over him. And then I remember he got a separate, smaller blanket for his feet and went to sleep. And that's my entire dream. So when I woke up, I told the dream to my mom, and she just got this look on her face, like this sheet white, like look on her face, like she was startled almost. And she said, you know, I don't think I've told you this, but your father used to not be able to sleep unless his feet were covered, and he used a separate blanket. I thought that was so bizarre. That's so crazy. And you know, it could have been something that was told to me and I just don't remember. It's entirely possible, but when I also described the apartment, she was like, that sounds like our first apartment that we got together. And there's no way I would have known that. Like, there are no pictures of it. I have no idea what it looks like. Like I said, there are very few pictures even of my mom and my dad together because he didn't like having pictures taken. So there were pretty much no pictures in their first apartment, as far as I know. And if there are, then it would be like just a very small section of the apartment. Like I wouldn't get to actually see the whole thing. And that's, I would call that less spoopy and more like, oh, that's just kind of a weird coincidence, or like maybe you picked up information from the ether and like put it together in your brain, or maybe like that's a part of your DNA. Who knows? These are like just 3 of my stories of like weird shit that has happened. So now let's get into some of the scientific research about why people sense things that aren't there, and some of the ideas of why people have these very specific hallucinations. So the first thing that I want to talk about is top-down processing. So this refers to a thing that you do in your brain where you have a thought first and then your senses will follow after that. So if you're in a spoopy house and that house kind of feels like a little creepy and weird, you might think, oh, this house is probably haunted. And then from there, your senses will start to like you'll feel paranoid, you might feel like a pressure, you might feel like you can't breathe or like you're cold because you're getting those cold chills up your spine. Your body basically creates the scenario that you think you're going to have. So that's a really fascinating one, because I know I've been in places where I've been like, ooh, this is spooky. And then I've had experiences that I later like kind of talked myself out of, like, yeah, but I was kind of expecting that something was going to happen here, so that's probably what happened. I was seeing things that weren't really there. Next thing I want to talk about is the brain's ability to find patterns in pretty much anything. So you see this when people see like the Virgin Mary in their toast, or like Jesus on a water damaged wall. So that's the kind of stuff that I think of when I think of like the human brain finding patterns. And like even if I'm looking at a pattern that's kind of abstract, I will like find faces in it, or I'll find like, oh, that looks like a horse. And it's the thing that you do like when you're laying on your back and looking at clouds, like that one looks like a cat, that one looks like a duck. It's not actually meant to be shaped like a cat or a duck. You're just seeing it because your brain is built to recognize patterns. So what can happen is you take a photo, and the photo gets a weird light anomaly, which happens often in photography, no matter if it's digital or analog. And you look at the photo and you're like, ooh, there's something in there. Your brain is finding something in there. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something in there. Not to like just shit on ghost photography or anything. I have no idea if something has ever really been captured, but I do know that a lot of famous ghost photography has been debunked as completely fake. And I think that's kind of worth noting. Another thing that tends to happen is you see these like dust particles that are flying through the air, and those are now considered orbs, where it's like you want to see something, so your brain processes it as something that's phenomenal and fantastic and paranormal, but really it's just dust, or it's just a fly. Again, I'm not saying that there aren't people who have captured things. I have absolutely no idea, but I think it's worth looking at what your brain naturally does to process information and seeing, is it really paranormal, or am I just thinking it's paranormal? But in general, a lot of these things are made up, or there are perfectly reasonable and rational explanations for it. So if you're freaking yourself out thinking, oh my God, there's so many orbs all over the place when I take pictures in my apartment, you probably need to dust. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about that I think is the most intriguing, and that I would really love to be a part of a study on this, is electromagnetic fields. So I talked about how I didn't know if that portion of the house, like my room in my childhood home, was maybe under some sort of electromagnetic field of some sort. You can actually get the exact same results of being in like a haunting if you stand in a specific electromagnetic field. So you'll get the sense that someone's there, the sense that someone means you harm, you might get hallucinations, you might feel things, and this is all incredible. And a lot of times, I hate to like shit on someone's parade if they really like hauntings. A lot of times, like the hauntings that people experience can be explained by being under like weird electrical lines or under weird magnetic force. So I think it's something to be aware of. If you're feeling like stuff is going weird in your home, might be something worth looking into. If nothing else, you'll just make yourself less paranoid about what's going on in your house. And I have so many friends who are like, oh my God, my house is haunted, this is happening. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it is absolutely possible that your house is haunted. I don't know that for certain, that that's not a thing that can happen. And I certainly have like weird experiences that I can't explain. However, a lot of times it is like your brain creates something and then you feed into it, and then it starts happening more and more and more. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is something that the most people have experiences with, and that is sleep terrors or night terrors. More often than not, when people experience sleep paralysis, and this is a lot of people, you're just kind of frozen in your body and you can't move because your body turns itself off when you're asleep so that you don't act out your dreams. It's super handy. And also you can look into documentaries about people who always act out their dreams when they're sleeping, and see that that is like a very real sleep disorder, which is fascinating too, and slightly scary. Usually what happens is someone's frozen in their body, they can't move, but they can think, they feel like their chest is heavy, they feel like they can't speak, and then they'll usually come out of it within like a minute or so. And like, it's disconcerting, it's horrible to experience, but it's not scary necessarily. You just feel trapped for a second and then you come out of it. The other thing that can happen is you can be locked into your body like that and then also have your amygdala translate that as being a dangerous thing for you. So your amygdala lights up and it's like, oh my God, something's happening. And then all of a sudden you feel maybe a presence in the room or you see something in the room. And it's not really there. Your brain is producing a hallucination because it's scared as shit. But when you see it, you feel very much like you are unsafe, like someone is standing right next to you, maybe like someone's talking to you or touching you. And it's not real, but that doesn't mean your experience with it is any less valid. And that's also something that you need to consider. If you're having a lot of experiences where you wake up in a panic and you feel like someone's at the foot of your bed, you might just have sleep paralysis. And if it's something where, you know, you've thought that your house is haunted before and then all of a sudden you start having sleep paralysis often, you're probably freaking yourself out. It's very possible that you're freaking yourself out. Look, I want to believe in ghosts. I really do. I want to believe that there's something after we die, but we just don't have any evidence of that. And I feel like it's one thing to have, you know, paranormal stuff as this kind of fun entertainment value thing, and it's another thing to really freak yourself out and make yourself scared over absolutely nothing. So for me, it's all about balancing what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking with healthy skepticism. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It doesn't invalidate your experience. If you feel 100% like you've seen a ghost and you feel comfortable with that, then have at. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. But a lot of it is about having that healthy skepticism. If something's going wrong in your life, it could be a mix of paranoia, of hallucinations, and of you just, you know, being human and being prone to error. So I think it's all worth considering. All right, you guys, if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up. And if you really enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the little bell to get notified every time I release a new video. And I have my monetization back. It's almost like they knew I was spending so much money at VidCon. They were like, we gotta give you something back. So expect more videos because I can actually do it and be somewhat compensated for it now. Compensated for the incredible amount of time that I spend. Not that you guys have to compensate me, but you know, if I can get a little ad revenue, and I mean very little, like a cup of coffee once or twice a month. But yeah, so have you guys had any paranormal experiences? And if you have, can you think of anything that would explain what you went through? Or do you feel very strongly like it was a genuine paranormal experience? That's what I want to know. Let's all leave our comments below. Let each other know all your spoopy stories. And if I hear some really, really good ones, I'll tell them on the next Spoopy Time video, which I love Spoopy Time. I love ghost stories. I really love scary stories in general. I am kind of that type of freak. I'd also like to invite you to like me on my other social platforms. And what else? Say hi to me. I want to talk to you. See you next time. Mwah. I made a group on Facebook. It's the Ojoli group, and it's kind of an anything goes group. So a lot of it is stuff that inspires us, skincare and makeup, but also information on like self-care, entertaining stuff, inspiring stuff. I basically want to hear from you, what you guys want.